Hello and welcome everybody. Today I have a pretty powerful and very easy to play build with zero micromanagement for you. I always wanted to make a strong shotgun build, and the centerpiece of this setup is the Bulldog shotgun from the Challenger starting class. It is a high crit chance and high crit damage build with decent damage reduction to not instantly die on apocalypse, improved evasion with maxed out iframes on your dodge and high passive healing. Acid and bleed are basically always on your target, bumping your overall damage potential. Plus, all your weapon mods can be used back on back as soon as they expire. The handguns mod is especially useful and powerful as a strong fire and forget mechanic that automatically seeks out targets and eats up standard enemies in no time. I will try to keep this build short and to the point. I guess most people by now are very familiar with the game. You can find the wiki links to all the essential equipment of this build in the video description. As a small bonus, I will show you at the end how you can easily switch to a fire bleed or shock bleed build. Archetypes for this build are the Challenger as primary class and Gunslinger in the secondary slot. We have a mid to close range build here, and the Challenger has a great all damage buff, means mod damage, range damage and so on are all affected by his buff. Melee in this build is a viable option, and with Juggernaut active you can simply waltz through normal enemies and even go toe to toe with elite mobs and aberrations. Activating a Challenger skill also decreases enemy damage to you by 10 to 20%, which works independently from your damage reduction and further enhances your survivability. And the free revive on top makes this a great build for solo players. The Gunslinger offsets the main downsides of the Bulldog shotgun, namely its reload time and not so great ammo reserves. The additional 15% fire rate in combination with 20% reload time from empty turns the shotgun into a real beast, and with Bullet Storm active, which has a low cooldown and long duration, you simply melt enemies. The additional 20% fire rate and 50% reduced reload time gives you fantastic sustained damage while also having high base damage and huge stagger potential. Traits I chose here are Fortify, Regrowth, Untouchable, Vigor, Expertise, Barkskin, and the last 8 points go into Triage. So we have high passive healing, improved evasion, improved damage reduction and shorter cooldowns. Spirit is not needed. We will use a ring slot to make sure our weapon mods can have 100% uptime as long as you have enemies in range. The Bulldog is in my opinion the best overall shotgun here. Ford's scattergun hits harder and becomes a beast during Bullet Storm, but I prefer the overall performance of the Bulldog with the bigger magazine and being fully automatic all the time, thus benefiting from the Gunslinger's class increased fire rate more. The coach gun would be a good option for boss fights where you cannot stay within the 10 meter optimal range of the Bulldog, but the very small magazine is something you have to get used to. During Bullet Storm it is like the scattergun, an absolute menace. Corrosion rounds as weapon mod and twisting wounds as mutator will ensure a higher crit chance, more crit damage and 10% additional damage against targets with corrosion. To give you the full picture here, with bleed on the target, and thanks to the mutator this is always the case, and active corrosive rounds that you can use on cooldown, this setup will provide you with a 70% crit chance from classes, rings, fragments and so on. 130% critical damage, the standard bonus damage from corrosive rounds, which is around 13% here, thanks to some additional mod damage from the Challenger class and a relic fragment, and then on top 10% bonus damage against targets affected by corrosion. All this without any kind of micromanagement, just shoot and use the weapon mod. Melee weapon is the gas giant with vampire blade, because usually you open up with the shotgun and if anything comes within melee range you end their day with the hammer. but you could go with any setup here. Pick what you like most. Nebula is the handgun with Nanoswarm as the super strong weapon mod that auto-targets anything in range. The Harmonizer Mutator further boosts the mod's damage. The handgun alone is a beast in tight environments like the hatchery for example. Killed enemies leave a gas cloud behind for even more damage, and a short burst will refill all your weapon mods if you happen to run out of mod energy due to the lack of enemies. Amulet is the abrasive whetstone to boost crit chance and crit damage. Thanks to the Bulldog's weapon mutator, bleed should always be on your targets. My ring setup here is Probability Cord and Stone of Malevolence as mandatory slots for more crit damage and enough mod power. The other two slots I usually use for more damage with Acid Stone and Burden of the Gambler. These I would swap around depending on the boss fight. If you encounter weak spot reliant bosses like the Corruptor, go with Xenia's Malice instead of Burden of the Gambler. Acid Stone could be switched for more survivability like Hardened Coil or an additional revive option with the Black Cat Band. Relic in use is the Tranquil Heart for maximum passive heal. Check out my solo player guide if you want a step-by-step tutorial on how to obtain it. Fragments I use are ranged crit chance and ranged crit damage alongside 10% more mod damage, which affects Nebula's Nanoswarm, and the base damage that your corrosive shot rounds will deal. The optimal armor setup here for 75 encumbrance is the rather stupid looking Leto Mark II combined with the Labyrinth gloves and the Fey Royal head cover. 67.2% damage reduction with bark skin and bark extract is not bad and lets you tank a few minor and medium hits on Apocalypse. Juggernaut will increase this to 73.7%, not bad for a build without any amulet, rings or fragments dedicated to increase your damage reduction. I usually go with the Bruiser Boots and Leto Mark II, simply for better looks and a little less protection. We really need a transmog system in this game. You have a heavy dodge roll but with more iframes thanks to the Untouchable trait, and reduced stamina costs thanks to the Challenger's utility perk. I think the Acid Bleed setup works best with the additional crit rate, and I love the Nebula's weapon mod for clearing ads and a strong damage option you don't have to manually manage. But we are not bound to the element here. Switch to Fire or Grounding Stone and use Hotshot or Witchfire on the Bulldog and Firestorm on your handgun of choice for a fire setup, or Overflow and the Enigma for a shock setup, or take the Alumni Ring and mix the different elements to your liking. Especially the fire setup with Firestorm on your handgun is really fun to play, just don't use it in co-op where it is just annoying as hell. Like the Nebula, you can use the Enigma or Hellfire to quickly fill up mod power with their natural elemental base damage. So there you have it, a strong and fun to play shotgun build with high survivability, a revive, decent evasion and damage reduction. If you have additional suggestions or improvements, let us know in the comments. For more Remnant 2 content as well as some Starfield coverage, stay tuned to the channel. For now this is all, take good care of yourself and enjoy your gaming sessions.